Agenda a little bit. We're probably gonna be doing 5-7 minutes on the context, like who's who we are, and same with Soda. And then we're going to dive right into this case study on the pharmaceutical sector, which I think is a fantastic way of explaining like why makes sense, how is it done, and what are the key learnings from it. Let me know if there's anything else, but this should be a little bit more into 35-40 minutes. Okay, cool. Wanna do your introduction?
Yes. You want me to go first, Matteo?
Yeah, please go ahead. Happy to do that.
Thank you. Yeah, for everyone watching at home and live and later recorded. My name is Koen van Duysen. I'm head of customer and partners at SODA. SODA is part of an ecosystem, so we work with great partners like Mutt Data. A lot of people at SODA have a strong background in governance, and you'll see why when we talk through the track today. Me including a lot of data governance, and really where data governance and DQ come together, that's really my area of expertise. Over to you, Matteo.
Amazing. Thank you for that, Koen. On my end, a little bit of nowadays, I'm Chief Learning Officer and partner at Mutt. I'm going to dive a little bit deeper into what Mutt is later on, but personally, I come from a very nerd background, so I guess I used to be like a data practitioner, machine learning engineer before. Now I've come over into more of the commercial side of things, but I do have a lot of my hands deep in the mud with these kind of things, right? So churning, playing, mugging, working with data, understanding, and obviously with all these years, it's been like, let's say almost, 10 years, 10 plus years. Working with data and working with data quality has always been something that fascinates me, right? It's about connecting the dots and understanding like how this gets to there and what can we get out of that. So that's a little bit of my background and how I came to be here. Now, jumping more about the organization, like we here have been applying big data, as it was called some years ago. I was just plain data for a long time right now. We do play mostly in North America and South America as a whole. That's where most of our projects are implemented, but we're a professional services AI oriented organization. And everybody knows that if you want to do AI correctly, you gotta start from the data. You cannot have and think about any, I don't know, whatever hype. Is it generative AI? Okay, you gotta have great quality data if you want to train, implement, transform, or fine-tune any of those models. The same happens with any other kinds of machine learning. The more relevant and deep the technology is, the more important the data is to it. So we know right from the start that all of our services are related to that, right? How we can move forward and implement correctly AI applications, and what does data, what's the role of data playing a part into that, which is always fundamental. Anything else you want to add is obviously we help organizations go into an AI enablement or an AI-fueled future, but also we build the capacities in the data platforms and the infrastructure to help that happen. Back to you, Koen.
Yeah, thanks, Matteo. And I'm just going to second what you said. The founders of SODA came from a data governance background. And, about 10 years ago, a lot of people started, migrating to the cloud and wanting to do more with their data. And first, they need to find out what their data is and so on. And then there was a lot of interest in data governance. But then it also became clear that, a lot of the business efforts that people want to do with data fall flat if you don't have a good grasp on your quality of your data. And now even more, right? If you want to do AI or generative AI, collaborative AI, whatever it is, before it was data science, it doesn't matter. If the bad data goes in, it's too late. And that's what SODA focuses on. So we want to make sure that bad data doesn't make it to your clouds, doesn't make it to your models, to your AI algorithms, and so on. And the earlier we can stop bad data and quarantine it, the better, because it prevents long pipelines running, expensive and resourceful, both human and machine compute. And we want to prevent that. And I'll explain in a bit how we do that, but that's really the mission of SODA. So we're squarely focused on data quality, and whether you do it via reliability or observability or data testing, we want to cover it all, but the goal is data quality. That's SODA in a nutshell.
Absolutely, and I think there's a phrase from the data community that really summarizes all is garbage in, garbage out.
Exactly.
Whatever bad data you're putting into whatever process, analytics, report, etc., then the results are going to be underwhelming, to say the least, right? So that's a little bit about that. And let's give it back to you, Koen.
Yeah. Now, how do we do it, right? Because it's a big problem to solve. We see it in three phases, and maybe the audience can see themselves in one of them. Sometimes people come to us and say, like, look, every day we have incidents, and a lot of them have to do with data. And that's already a really great metric. If you can capture that already, you already have a lot, right? And you can show if what you're doing has an impact. Does it go up or down? And the metric being incidents related to data or data sets. Now, some people say, like, look, every day it's a different incident. I don't know what to test for or what to prevent, because every day I'm learning something new, and I need to cover my whole data. So then it's really good to start with observability. Just observe your critical data sets or all your data sets, tables, whatever it is, wherever you can start, and observe. Don't start alerting yet, because you're going to create alert fatigue. People are going to get so many signals that they just ignore them, and you don't want that either. But you can have good dashboards that give you at least an overview of like where the incidents happen, signals, and just where what is failing. Then you can start working in data domains, which you might already be doing. And then the critical ones, maybe in the first quarter, you do one or two, and you say, like, look, for these data domains, we have experts, right? There are people that know this data better, both on the technical side and on the business side. That's key. You don't have to hire stewards or find stewards. Just ask in the organization, who is the expert? Who knows about this data? Well, then you can start testing a bit more specific, and you can start alerting. If something goes wrong with data related to that data domain, you can send a very clear message via Slack or via MS Teams or whatever else you use. And the power of SODA is then that you could say, like, look, we've got this central engine here that can allow very technical people, data engineers, to add code, to add DQ rules. But we can also work with people that are experts on this data, but that don't know how to code, but they want to collaborate. They want to add to it as well. That's very powerful, right? That's where the data governance comes in. DQ meets data governance.
Yeah, and sorry to interrupt you, but like the democratization aspect and the collaborational aspect of all of this, because otherwise it's just one centralized entity where it's trying to control the whole of the data domains, but they can't really stretch that far. Is that correct?
That's right. That's right. And whether you call that data mesh or it's governance or whatever you're trying to do, you want the technology to sit close to your modern data stack. But the edges could be somebody just saying, like, hey, here's my requirements. I give it to you as text, and you do with it, and you collaborate. And somebody on the left is working on the source, but it's the same engine, but it can be plugged in everywhere. Eventually, though, we want to have the requirements from the business, and then work with the data engineering team, the data platform team, to put the quality controls as early as possible, right? We don't want to observe when the data is already in Snowflake. We want to, when Fivetran just delivers the data, and before dbt transforms it, we want to do some tests already and be preventative. Hey, the data is not fresh. It doesn't conform to what we had said our customers would send. So we're going to circuit break here and stop here and prevent hours and hours of compute. Those are the three phases. It doesn't mean that you're always on the left or the right. Maybe for one use case, you're earlier, one for later. What's also important is that layer underneath, there is a lot of governance. Each data quality rule needs a dimension, whatever attributes you can give. And that typically is active metadata. So it's the signals and the results get given, passed on to the next part, basically often a catalog or a governance layer or whatever can take those signals in.
Yeah, it's interconnected to the rest of your data ecosystem services, right? Because it's not operating on its own. And I want to go right to the next slide, as in, like, it's also, there's this method, right, that you just mentioned, of how you get into data quality, how you get into preventative, how you get into democratization of data. But there's also, like, the way of working, right? Because maybe people could get some insights here. We are organizations here prepared to do this, but at the same time, we're different kinds of organizations. So Zoda is more of like a data quality platform, and we're more of a professional services organization. So I think it's also relevant to know that sometimes some organizations that are moving into this journey that you just mentioned, Koen, and they really need help with that, right? They really need hand-holding. Maybe data is not at the core at the moment, or data practices are not at the core. Maybe they're not a digital native organization, or maybe they are under budget, understaffed at the moment. So also leveraging teams that do have those expertise to pick the right tools to leverage SODA here, to adapt and fine tune to that organization, is also key part of the change management, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Before any effort starts, a good study is always the best idea. There is a lot of change management that has to happen around this. There's a lot of modern tools. You have to pick the right tools. It has to work together. There's a lot of people involved. So the plan is very important to have that right from the beginning. How it's going to be rolled out. How are we going to make sure that if everybody starts adding quality, like it's in the same way, it's in a standardized way, how we build something that can scale out. And always that plan needs to link back to clear business metrics, right? SODA focuses on the technology. We don't have PS. That's why we work with great partners like Mutt Data. And that's key, right? It's always necessary.
Yeah, I absolutely agree. And also having the expertise and having a team right there collaborating and helping and saying, okay, this is the way to go. We've done it many, many times. Probably will help you leapfrog and get fast through to that end state where you want to go, right? I think
That's right.
that's important. Again, why, I guess, is data quality is important. I think this is also very relevant to be talking about this, correct?
Yeah, totally. And you have it. This is why this is such a great case study. It links back to a business case, right? We were not moving data around to move data around. It's already costly enough. Like there is a key driver, something that comes back at the C-suite, and that's the biggest why, basically.
Yeah, exactly. There's always a business. You got to start by the business use cases. This happens all along in technology, not only here with data or AI, whatever. Sometimes people are chasing tools or solutions and then finding them problems, but at least in this sense, what we see many, many times, it's the business use cases that then map to data quality issues, right? For this specific case, we're going to dive in deeper later, but there were some problems in the marketing process. There were some challenges in the stock, obviously for this retailer, and that was more related to data quality than whatnot, right? Also integrating different data sources and having all of them collaborating together and speaking the same language in the same format, whatever, with those domain knowledge experts that SODA helps bring onto the table. That's how you get everything in sync and working as an orchestra, I guess.
Yeah. I think a lot of people can see whether you're in this industry or a different one, it's very common problems, right? Like different sources, disparate data, inconsistency in data, especially, of course, in e-commerce and retail, anything with supply chain, it's extra bad because, yeah, the problems are if your your stock is off or so on, that's the core of your business, of course.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah,
Sorry,
go
go
ahead,
ahead. Sorry.
Matteo.
No, I was about to say just one thing, that when the systems are off and whatnot, and this comes back to the thing, as in there's a common problem there, that you want to be more data driven as a company, but it's hard for you to do that because your data practice is not as mature, your data platform is not mature, and I think that's what you're about to get into with this slide, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Now, when it comes to like a quality offering, because there are so many different data sources and it's, everything has to work together, it's very important to look for something that supports active metadata. You typically sometimes also called the modern data stack. What, for the sake of for the audience to understand the key thing of this, right? What is something that's part of the modern data stack is that each component generates insights, metrics, statistics, and doesn't keep it within its system, but passes it on to the next one. SODA generates quality checks and says like, hey, in this table, this many checks failed, and we're building metrics over time, and the trend is off so much that we're going to send a signal. Well, we don't keep that signal with us. We can give it to your catalog, an Atlan or an Alation or a Colibra or whatever. They can then use it to alert in Sigma. And so everything flows together. And that's very important, because if you don't, you are then on the hook to make all that work together. And that's the problem that you had with like the old legacy tools. So what I wanted to show here is that SODA is part of that ecosystem. And you have a Snowflake or a Databricks. With that comes an Atlan, a Sigma, a Fivetran. Well, SODA fits right in there. DBT fits right in there. Do you do already some tests in DBT? Well, those DBT tests can go into SODA. You see, the metadata goes back and forth. And it really, the cutting edge part of this is data contracts, where I'll bring that back later, but that's something that SODA, not just SODA, because it's an open source standard, but this really is the first time that people start thinking of moving to building data pipelines like building software with APIs. Right now, how people move data around is like building software without APIs. You just take data, and then the next day somebody dropped a column and oops, you have to observe. That doesn't work, right? You have to enforce the contracts. The reason I'm bringing it up here is because that's part of that ecosystem. You can only have a contract if the other partner also
they are also playing by the same rules, I guess.
Exactly,
right?
exactly.
The other actors of they have to all coordinate together to get to the same end phase. So we've seen it this many times at different organizations where they are commencing this journey right away into the data-driven world or data self-service or whatever you want to call it. And at first we see more or less about, you start with some dashboards, maybe by the end, obviously, which is next to the business use case. And they don't have much on the orchestration. They don't have much on the data quality. They might have one data source integrated. That's about it on the cloud. So that's kind of like the first phase. And then they start building onto, okay, we add some orchestrators and we need some modelers and we need some data quality tools for that and the governance on top as well. So that's how they start bringing on that. And I guess that's where most of our customers are at the moment, to be honest. To be honest with you.
I would say that most customers come to us as well when they're in that situation, and they have too many times that somebody on the business logs in and the dashboard is incorrect or data is missing. So the pipeline didn't fail, but it's like half of the data didn't go through. And then the data engineers need to get up at 6 a.m. in the morning or 5 a.m. And trust me, they don't like that. And that's like when they come and say like, okay, how do we do this better? Right? Very, very common.
And the organization is, I mean, they are lacking trust to the rest of the organization at some point.
Yeah.
That's a typical pain point. Once you start showing data, you start analyzing data, you start doing something with data, you're informed by it. And then when all of these issues start coming in, they start lacking trust. And then they're figuring out, okay, how can we make it more trustable? How can we be sure that the marketing team or the sales team or the finance team is going to trust this data? So I guess, again, going back to this and what you said before, Koen, this is like kind of like the overall picture of how things interconnect and how data contracts and data management or data talking about other data is moved around and interconnected. I think that's super, super relevant to do as well.
And it also brings back your point of like the change management. You can't just say, oh, we're going to plug in a DQ tool. It has to work with your ecosystem. So there's a lot of that advice that has to come with.
I agree totally here. And I'm gonna now jump right into the case here because I think it's start to exemplify the things that we've been talking about, right? Just a short introduction. Sirum is a US-based entity. What their mission is to make drugs. I mean, they process and reutilize unused drugs, blister cards, so to like pharmacy kind of like products, and they get them mostly via donations from other larger pharmacies and whatnot. They're an NGO, so they resell these drugs for a much less of a price. So there's also a very interesting impact component to the company. So when we got there, I think we were talking to a company that was, as an organization, had much of the issues we were talking before, right? So it was hard for some of the systems to have a unique patient identifier and to like actually understand, like, okay, this patient is in this process in this system, internal software system, like a transactional, an ERP or a CRM, whatever, and that matches the same patient in another system. And that part of the data quality generally is an issue, because companies do buy, purchase, or build some internal systems, and to each its own, right? In general, they work in silos because they depend on different teams. So that lacking unique identifier was then hard on other business cases and processes that we're going to talk right following this. Then it generated data inconsistency, because when you have those silos and the patients are not the same, or when the status of those patients are not the same, or when even the drug status was not the same, it also didn't help on their stock outs, for instance, like what's the actual level of stock that they had. That was very relevant, so that they could then push the sales of certain drugs versus others, or because maybe some drugs were near to their term of expiration and they need to push that out faster. That was all very relevant. So all the business process needed to align with that data. Finally, when they wanted to run marketing campaigns with this inconsistent data, or with lacking patient identifiers from different systems, they found out, and they had to manually correct them time and time again on those leads or on those retention campaigns, whatever they were working on, because one system was saying one thing and the other system was saying another thing. That inconsistency did impact in marketing, for example, and outreach. So I think that sets us up a little bit on the context on where we're at. Again, here the challenge, as I said before, is, okay, how can we make data trustable, right? How can we use our transactional systems and our other business systems, put that into a data warehouse, and have a data set or some final end reports that we can actually trust them? I mean, not us as a data team or as a data vendor, but the actual business analyst. That's what's important, because some of them did use Salesforce, but then when they went and checked other systems or the reports, they didn't have the same numbers, right? They didn't run. So in the end, who are you going to trust? Or how, if you want to find the issue, where is the issue at, right? That's a deduplication, for example, of patients. Typical problem in the unique identity resolution. This happens time and time again, to be honest. This is not something we've seen only at one sort of place. So now your KPI is making data trustable, getting data fast where you need it, and also improving some business processes with this data duplication and data consistency. So they need to actually, like, what's going on? Are we sure this is what's going on? Are we sure we have this level of churn, or are we talking about duplicate patients? Finally, the second challenge is when you start implementing this, and connected to what you mentioned before, Koen, you want to democratize this, right? And the data team is not the expert on all of the data domains. How can you have a user-friendly stack that's friendly for the data team to actually model and transform and do those data quality checks, but also for the data domain experts to collaborate them and put in their knowledge, their inputs, like their rules and checks and balances, right? And this is a small organization. We're not talking about 1,000 people company here. We're talking maybe 50, 100, 150. That's the kind of size of what we were challenged at the time.
Yeah, I want to touch on the user friendliness, because it comes back to the trust, right? Like, how do you build trust and instill trust in data? It's easy to measure. It's that metric that I mentioned in the beginning. If we had one customer that started with SODA, and they had 60% of all their incidents were related to data. So not very high trust. But if that goes down, and over time, you can show that trust gets created. And then related metrics around that, KPIs. Now, user friendliness, of course, you can only build something user friendly if you know who your end customer is, right? So it depends on the persona. A lot of organizations started using SODA as open source. It still is for a part open source. That means a lot of data engineers want to pull pip install SODA and just from the command line start installing and running checks, and have a lot of tools to create check templates and add calendars and so on. That's user friendly as well. But then, of course, a lot of customers started saying like, hey, look, our data engineering team is small. And we have a lot of internal customers, and they know this data inside out, and they know the problems, but they can't write even the simple abstracted SODA CL language. They're not going to write that. So we built a no-code UX, and that's then the user friendliness for people that are absolutely not technical. So they can simply come in and say like, look, I don't know how to code, but I can add a valid value because I know what our patient identifiers, the regular expression, for example, that it should follow, or what country codes we're operating in. And we spent a lot of time on this to build UXs like this. And the core is, of course, the same engine underneath. What the business creates can be executed at the edge via the data engineers, but it's the same engine that executes. So a good UX goes a long way for trust.
Yeah, absolutely. And you're putting the power and data checks and data balances right at the tips of the users that actually need it, and the users that actually have those issues, right? And the users that understand the data, and they can put their reliable like business domain knowledge inside those checks, which is most oftenly, to be honest, is not directly in the realms of the data team, right? So the data team built a platform, they added some checks, they are working with the data stack, they did the quality, but you will not go all the way through if you don't have this democratization and collaboration enabled for that. I think that's critical, and it also provides a friendly interface for people that don't know how to code directly. You just mentioned it.
Yeah, and one thing I want to add, Matteo, is people don't necessarily need to come to the DQ engine. We will give the signals in Slack, MS Teams, the catalog. That's very important as well. That's also user friendliness, right? That people, the knowledge, the trust comes to them in the tools they work. That's key.
That is true. That is true, and that visibility into issues and whatnot, into monitoring, into data consistency, that also builds trust in the end. That's what we found, because obviously if you know and if you have a dashboard or some sort of way of understanding, okay, how is this dashboard or how is this table operating right now? Is it consistent or isn't it consistent? And if you at least have some visibility into that, maybe it helps to understand and to forfeit those times where you've gone to the dashboard, you didn't like what you were seeing, you checked over Salesforce or you checked over another CRM, and the numbers were not adding up, right? So providing that status and information also builds trust with the rest of the organization, which I think is super critical. So moving forward, the case and the solution, what we built for them, ideally, one part of the solution, what was critical is bringing checks and quality validations at every data processing stage. So what we mean by that is you might have instances where data gets logged in from whatever system it's being pulled off, or transaction system, your ERP, whatever that means. There's checks over that. Then there's checks when data gets modeled or transformed. Then there's checks prior to pushing those data to reports or maybe in the final tables. So every stage in the pipeline, as data gets moving through, there's contracts at every stage. And those contracts are automatically, are being checked by these automatic, obviously, code, but we remove the manual intervention. Obviously, putting humans in the loop in different business processes, the more they interact, the more they need to work on data manually, the more prone to errors, right? Because it's hard to reproduce the mistakes, it's hard to find and fix the error consistently. So if you can do that in the most autonomous ways with different programs and contracts, and you keep adding them, right? Because you find just like any software program, it's the same cycle. You find the bug, you fix, you add, and then you add tests and quality checks to assure that they comply with that. I think that's one of the important aspects of fixing the duplication of patients, right? So then adding SODA was just a no-brainer for us because of what you just mentioned before. It's easy. It brings the checks to the people. It has a very friendly interface if needed. It's integratable to the rest of the ecosystem, etc. We did add SODA with a bunch of other data stack tools, but SODA was at the heart of this all. Then we had the proactive detection and monitoring and alerting. So if something happened, we did alert an internal channel of the client, and that rang a bell with different teams where they could stop maybe an order being sent with the wrong medication and drugs. That was super critical, very important. Remember, we're in a context of HIPAA compliance, we're in the context of drugs. I mean, there is a cost of not having the right data. It's just not just like looking at some dashboard and say, okay, we sent 10 emails versus sending 15 emails yesterday, right? So there's also hard business costs here. And then like what you just mentioned, there's this continuous monitoring, right? It's automated, it's continuous, there's quality checks over and over, and the alerts are sending. I think it all wraps up to why the solution is best for this case. So finally,
Matteo, if I can add, the alerting is something that comes back with a lot of our customers. You know, whether it's whatever the team is that's at the receiving end, just telling them early on that they can't trust the data that they're looking at, whether that's because they're selling annuities or they're doing pricing analytics of theme parks. It's typically at the core of what this business does. Always at the core. That's why the alerting early is very important.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think we can move forward, and I don't know if you want to add anything here on the actual pipeline and infrastructure.
In a specific example of shifting to the left, then on the example that we gave for a Sirum is that on the right, before we start visualizing, before it goes to the BI tool, we're going to do some tests. What the next phase would then be is to say, okay, let's in this pipeline that's visualized here, and it's a very simple one where Airflow, it doesn't have to be Airflow, but typically it's Airflow does the orchestration. We have some source data that gets ingested, and then dbt does the transformation. So what we're going to do is these green boxes with the 3 dots, that's SODA. So we're going to push left as much as we can. Maybe we should start testing already some things before the transformation. And maybe even as the data gets ingested, that will be best. Unless we can test at the source, that would be even better. And what's even better is every time transformation logic is changed, so somebody does a change request or a pull request in an update request in GitHub, that we check there, that we, as it part of our unit testing, that we test for data as well. That would be the goal. But it's, of course, a very nice starting point already to test before the reporting goes out.
Yeah, absolutely. This is exactly what I was just mentioning of testing the whole stages of the data being transformed. If you can add that, and if you can continuously do that, it's super easy to then pinpoint, okay, if there's an alert or if there's a problem, where is that problem coming from? So it's fast to solve as well. Finally, on the solution that we did for Sirum, one thing that I want to add here is how was the quality assured, right? How was the quality assured? We did have the problem on the CRM, on Salesforce for this case, where it had to be updated constantly with understanding like what was the information missing from the transactional system, from the order management system, or from whatnot, which were different. So that then we had the full, like complete and golden record before sending that into Salesforce. And coming back to the slide, the slide before. So this export was actually not being an export to a reporting or visualization tool. It was actually modifying records in Salesforce. So that is super important. Now you're having like a single source of truth. Now people relying on this quality data, it was easy to go modify records in the CRM so that eventually they get it processed into another thing. But super important that now you're having this single source of truth, it's trustable, and it's the golden record where everyone knows what's going on and align with whatever the business process is needed to be. So that's how we solved inconsistency unique duplication of patients, duplication of stages, like one patient could be a different stage in the life cycle or whatnot, or deduplication of marketing campaigns, right? Because if you're going to do a marketing on a certain stage or certain audience and you had patients being at different points or duplicated in time, then they could be part of different campaigns, which was a whole mess for them, right? It's very hard to manage a successful campaign if you cannot do that with the data. That's super important, and why quality, how the quality affected their business process at Sirum. Impact, going right into the numbers. Oh, I don't know if you want to add anything, Koen, here on your input.
No, that was perfect. All good.
The deduplication and the accuracy improvement in the patients at patient stages improved like 20% their audience accuracy. What I mean by audience accuracy is that there were patients that were part of campaigns that shouldn't be there, and there were patients that weren't part of campaigns that should be there. So that let's hypothetically say the campaign had 100 patients, then there was 20 people between the ones that should come from the outside and others that are on the inside that shouldn't be there. That got improved by 20%. So that's a big number if you think about it, because obviously if you're doing whatever campaign you're doing, you're starting with 20%. That's wrong. That's error. That error got reduced, right, to zero. Obviously, then people were trusting the data because they had reliable data. They had a single source of truth, the data warehouse, and all those tables that were checked by SODA. Over time, obviously, once we brought the domain experts, once we added the full validations, and once we fixed the bugs, because there's not going to be there is no data pipeline without bugs until you add the test, until you do the quality. If you do that, and if you bring the client to the data, to the validations, which is what we did with the verifications, that's how we got it done. That's how we got it fast implemented. Finally, they did have the whole unification of identities of patients, right? Now they didn't have duplication issues. It was only one patient. This is one stage for the patient, all of their history regarding what they need. And that was brought, thankfully, by the different quality checks we did at the different stages you mentioned before, Koen.
No, this is great. I mean, to have a clear business metric that touches on the bottom line like this, that's really awesome. I think that says it all.
I think that says it all, and I think it also really, at some point, to be honest, and this is something funny that we found during the process, at some point we were having, like, let's say, challenges on the data because we added so much verification, so much quality into the data set that at some point the data was being challenged because, okay, I'm not sure this is the right number. I'm not sure this is what, I mean, this is from the business process and this is from the business partner, the analyst. I'm not sure this is the right result, etc. And we were starting to find that with all these checks and quality assessments, we were finding that the data was in a much better state to what the analysts understood of their own business process, right? Because once you start adding all that domain knowledge into a full-blown, seamless pipeline, you start operating in a completely different manner, and you start seeing it from end to end, right? From the source all the way to the final report or to the final dashboard, if you may. So at some point, it was interesting to find that the data quality tools were finding issues in the data sets, or let's call them data sets from other systems, or just manually curated data sets on Excel or Google Sheets. The data quality tools were helping them find issues and mistakes in their reports, if you know what I mean, right?
Yeah.
Because all that higher level of quality was being put in, and it was finding and pinpointing other data sets that were not part of the data warehouse, as in like, okay, no, this is the real number. This is the real churn your organization is having, right? And it didn't coincide with, I don't know, at some point, some other internal teams were measuring. It didn't coincide, but it did get to a point where the results that the quality data sets were producing were the actual trustable real results. And why is that? Because that domain knowledge and all those quality checks were already in it. So I think that's also very relevant, right? Because if you stick to a process, that's also there's a lot of manual intervention, there is a lot of human curation in the middle. it is very prone to errors. But if you can rely on an autonomous pipeline with all this business domain and business logic, you can get to this stage where, okay, this is our golden record. This is trustable. That's what we found that did work at this time. So yeah, this is gladfully the end of this. I don't know if there's anything else you want to add, but I think we've covered like the why, the how, and a specific example of this and how it works. And super open if you want to check us out later on our website or hit us an email when you can. Also, we're going to be posting this in social media later on, so that would be another opportunity to engage later on. I don't know if you want to add anything else, Koen?
Yeah, thanks, Phil. Thanks, Matteo, for having me. Anyone that wants to try Soda, go to soda.io. You can start a trial of the full offering. You can download the open source and get going instantly. Check out the docs. Anything you want to look into, like how do I run this in pipelines in Databricks, it's explained there. There's videos doing it in Snowflake, in whatever Dagster and Prefect, it's all there. So whatever stack you have, we have something for. And then when you're ready and when you're thinking of like the bigger project, Soda and Mutt Data is a really, really good combination.
Yeah, I think it's a good to crawl, walk, and then run, right? Go step by step,
right.
try it out, read the documentation, start to implement it, and play with it. I think it's the best way to really get yourself into it. Okay, so I think this is the end of the presentation, but we'll be open for 2 or 3 minutes of Q&A. So if you have questions in Spanish, in English, whatever language that may be, super open and glad to hear any comments from the people today present.
Thank you very much. For me, it's very good. I understand everything.
Awesome. That's good to hear.
Glad. Do you have any specific question or double click you want to do in any of these parts that we were just talking about?
No. For me, it's clear. It's very clear that the quality process is not at the beginning and not at the end. It's in every step, in every stage that we have. So it's very, very important for us to implement the quality process in each step.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's a great takeaway from what we were just talking today.
Yes, I will review something about Soda to know more about that.
Anytime.
Okay,
and if you have questions, you'll know where to find us.
Okay,
yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Welcome. Cheers. Okay, if there's any other input or comments, questions, you can use the chat or else ask directly. But otherwise, we'll wait 1 or 2 minutes more and start wrapping up. Okay, I think we're most probably done if there's no more questions. And
I
again,
think so too.
thank you for your time. Koen, thank you for your time, participants and live audience. And
Thank
hope
you.
this has been helpful for all.
Good stuff. Thanks, Matteo team. Cheers.
Okay.
Bye.
Have a good one. Bye-bye.